So I would like to invite the next panelist, Hazem Jarar. He is a CTO and from King Faisal Foundation. Basically, this panel discussion is going to be more interactive because we don't have the presentation. So I would like to ask Mr. Mamdouh Khwaji to share his experience with regards to the consolidation, virtualization, and things like that. And if any one of you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Bismillahir Rahim. In our company, we used to buy servers every single year. So at the end of the year, we're actually looking for what's new projects, what new applications need to be implemented. And then for every business department, then we actually buy a server for that department, regardless of how small or big the business application, but we need to actually separate the boxes or the servers that run specific application from others. So maybe there's different requirements for that, applications that will not actually work with other applications, the same server. So we have seen an increased cost in the servers. I'm buying the servers with high configuration. Every year we buy several ones, and we keep accumulating lots of servers in our data center. That increases the power consumption, that increases actually the space we need for the servers and the number of racks, in addition actually to more and more heating and cooling cost. So we thought of a better option to actually consolidate, and that's why the whole idea of virtualization came up. We ran a test in our environment just to find out how much we actually utilizing of each server. And that thing the test ran for a month. And we found that the average usage of our servers is actually less than 5%. So if you look to the CPU utilization, and it's actually very minimal. But we had to do it this way because we don't want actually the application of those guys to screw up something else in the other application. So at that time we decided, hey, it's not really wise anymore to keep accumulating more servers into our data center, and that's why we came up and thought about virtualization after doing our capacity planning, and then our choice was to go ahead with it, and we started that and we implemented the virtualization in my company.
Thank you. Can we take some questions if you have anything with regards to the consolidation, virtualization, saving cost, and some security concerns? Here you go.
Assalamu alaikum. What was the criteria which you was using to evaluate which approach or technology is going to be used for virtualization? Hyper-V or VMware or OVM, and which one of these is using?
Let my friend go ahead and just...
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Hazem Jarrar. I work for the King Faisal Foundation. It's a philanthropic foundation, and it's popular here in Saudi Arabia and even worldwide. To get into the topic, I think what is going on now is that since computerization has evolved around maybe 50 or 100 years ago, somebody takes it back to 100 years ago, we have been seeing that you always attach software to hardware. So you have a server, it's a physical server, but actually the running thing is the software. They are attached to each other. They are like a couple. They cannot produce unless you have them as a couple. You have the hardware and the software. Virtualization is actually a decoupling of the hardware and the software. So these couple that always have been working together, they are decoupled. So you have the software, which is your requirement, which satisfies your needs as a business, separated from the hardware. in a way that better utilizes the hardware. I think this is the basic idea of virtualization. With this, what do we get? We get more flexibility, better utilization. I'll get to your question later, but now let me tell you some kind of a story. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and when Microsoft produced Windows Vista, they came out with this CPU utilization and memory utilization. I remember at that time she was telling me, what's this, like your car? Is it something like, the car? I told her, no, this tells you, they were teaching them at school that the CPU, and you have the memory, and you have the keyboard, and you have the screen. I told her, no, this is the CPU. It tells you how the CPU is working. So if it's like 2%, it's only working on 2 out of 100. If it's 10%, it's working on 100, a 10 of 100. And also the other one is utilizing the RAM. At that time, they were teaching them that the CPU is the brains of the computer. So she was looking at it, and she's telling me, but the CPU is always like 2, 1, so the computer is not using its brains much. And that's right, the computer is not using its brains. The actual brains of the computer, the CPU, is not being utilized. If you look at any chart of utilization of any server, you will see it very minimal. Virtualization came to try to better utilize the hardware components. I think the company or the vendor that is somehow far ahead than all of the others is VMware. VMware has been a better solution. We always think that competition is good and it will give you better results as customers, like I am a customer. And Microsoft Hyper-V, there are also many other solutions that are evolving, but VMware was the first choice to answer your question in order to go for virtualization. You get more flexibility, you get better utilization of the hardware and the software. So if, for example, you have 10 virtual servers and you have 4 CPUs on that, when the virtual server requires more CPU, it will get it. And the issue of sharing is very important. It's like the internet. If I'm not sharing the same cable that is linking STC to a certain street and you are my neighbor, we are sharing the same cable. We utilize it better. It has evolved with us. And it's a necessity. We are afraid. Some of our servers in the foundation, we have not yet virtualized. We have virtualized non-critical servers. We are still afraid. We are still waiting for this technology to mature. We are still buying new servers that are dedicated and, as my colleague here was saying, are not utilized up to 10%. They work 2-3 hours per day in a utilization mode of not more than 20%. And the rest of the day, they're not doing nothing. But eventually, we're on a roadmap and on a plan to virtualize, because we have to get with the technology which is decoupling the hardware and the software. No longer that you would look at the server and think that I have the same, this is my server. No, your software is your server. And the resources that it needs, it's managed by the virtual environment. If this answers your question, I think VMware has been the startup, and they are still a pioneer in this. Microsoft has, since maybe a year ago, Microsoft Hyper is quite evolving very well. And there are others, not just them. There are others that are coming into the market because the market is really needy of this. I think every server has to be virtualized, and even now desktop virtualization, we're going back to the old technology when we used to work on the mainframe. So you only have a dumb terminal and sometimes an intelligent terminal, and this is coming very soon.
Thank you. I would like to add actually 2 points on top of what he has commented. One is the value proposition and the cost and benefit analysis, because I don't think like we have a direct answer, like we have to go with the VMware or we have to go with the Microsoft. It depends like what type of environment you have and what type of licensing negotiation you can do with the vendor. Those kind of things will really make the difference. Yes, can we have another question, please? Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would like to ask a root cause question. Is what's the cause, what's the actual cause about this waste of hardware? Because most of the hardware we bought is based on requirements, and it's mostly related to the non-functional requirements on the software side. It's regarding performance, scalability, reliability, all of this stuff. And we have to always go to the business requirements. But what we actually do is just to listen to the vendor, we recommend this hardware and just go with it. So is it good to adopt an enterprise architecture practice to realize our hardware and technology based on the actual requirements, or it doesn't work? Thank you.
If I may start, I think software will be the driving force in the future. And you will think of the hardware as dynamic. So if you have a software requirement, you need an accounting package. And that accounting package, networking is becoming very speedy. Most of the bottlenecks that we are seeing these days is in the CPU utilization, the memory, the sufficient memory, and the hard disk speed. For the hardware, the software really can just fly. So if we think of the hardware as dynamic, that if you need more, you will get more. If you need more, you just add to it, but it has to be a virtual environment. Why? Because if you just add to one server, then if you calculate the measurement of the responsiveness time of the software, it will be very high. But what if you are not using that software? If the employees have left work and you have to do in another software, another server, do some kind of analysis and generate reports for the next day. For example, sales analysis, inventory analysis, how much did we sell, how much are we expecting, an order analysis. This is done at the end of the day. Why not use more resources in order to get it done better? You know, I've been working for around 22 years. I remember we used to do GL somehow, general ledger end of day work. It used to take like 2 hours on this one machine with 640K, and it was like huge and working very fine. Now if I think of it, if I need to do an end of day work and I have a virtual environment, all of the resources I can utilize it to it. This is the dynamics of the virtual. Now for costing, the gentleman mentioned the costing, my colleague. I think we are still somehow facing that the vendors, when they want to sell us a virtual machine, you go into an extreme cost. It actually costs more. But if you think on the road that I needed a new server, I can create it on the fly. If somehow I get a little bit of performance issue, I will add more memory. I will add hard disk with solid state hard disks, replace the hard disks that I have with a faster, more memory I can add. It will give you a better utilization. If this answers your question. The enterprise adopting virtualization is quite important. But do it on a phases. Buy a virtual server and start using it, and then start to get a return on your investment. You paid a lot of money for this server with very high capacity. You know, I don't want to be a marketer for any company like VMware, but I'll tell you now, Dell, they started selling something called V-Start. V-Start 50, V-Start 100, V-Start 100. You buy a complete rack, and with that rack, everything is inside. The memory, the storage, the servers, everything is inside. The CPUs are inside. You give a little bit of some kind of requirement, so they configure it in a certain way. And then V-Start 50, you could create up to 50 servers. V-Start 100, you could create up to 100 servers. And approximate cost is for V-Start 50, maybe 400,000 riyals. That's a lot, but it's 50 servers. And it's still dynamic. The more hardware resources that you need, the better. Decoupling, you know, as I tried to explain it very briefly, the coupling of hardware and software since the invention of computers. This has to stop for general purpose computers. General purpose computers, like servers, you buy it, you put an operating system, then you put an application on it, or you use it for a certain requirement that you need. This is a general purpose server, a general purpose computer. It must be decoupled, and this is what's happening, it's decoupled. Now, costing issue, if you buy, it's becoming more and more cheaper. I remember when around 1.5 or 2 years ago, we bought this virtual server. I was jumping up and down, you know, for the cost. It's too much. Now I can buy it for 50% of the cost. And I have a better return on investment. They asked me for a server, I did it. The finance department, they asked me for a special server that they could share some files on, and they want to put some software for investment analysis. I did that within 1 or 2 days. This is also measured in the cost. If we look at the old project, when they used to ask me for some new server, okay, I'll have to go and see, and then get quotations from 3 different, and then buy it, and then see how will you use it, and all of that. Now I create the server for them. They start using it. They tell me, oh, we need more storage space. I add it to it. The flexibility of the virtualization is very huge, and we must start using it. I think we are far behind in this. Although I'm seeing many of my colleagues managing similar organizations, or even governmental and all of it, they are really going ahead in the virtualization. And I think the vendors must help us a little bit more. Like the main vendors, HP, IBM, Dell, they must help, and they are starting to do that since about 6 months or 1 year for Saudi Arabia here. They are starting to invest more and see the value of this country, you know, and putting the prices also down. Competition is coming high on this.
If I may add, just back to your question, is it a matter of a capacity planning or what? Two reasons for that. First reason is that so many applications, they better be in their own server. So you, as an IT guy, an internal audit wants to have very specific applications for their needs. You don't want to go ahead and put it in the same servers that there is some other applications running on it. So you need to have their own server. So in case if there's new patches for Microsoft server or any specific things, you need actually only to touch that application. You don't impact anyone else. That's first reason. Second reason, the servers are evolving. Now, in the past, you buy a single server, a single core server. Now you're going to buy the least in the market is dual core or quad core. So the technology is really expanding a lot, and the speed of CPU cycle is becoming very high. So you don't have the option to go for a lower end. So the minimum in the market is that. So that's for the reason. And the prices are going cheaper too. So that's the two reasons I think of. Okay. Now to comment on that, not just Dell, I think also HP has very good solutions that, and other vendors have other solutions, not just Dell has in the market for having a rack and having a better way of managing the whole rack and rack servers. So I think the whole technology and the whole server market is really growing very fast too.
Can we have some more questions? Scenario based, I prefer it's like a scenario based where we can really add value. Like, okay, this is what you have and this is the, then.
Assalamu alaikum. Once we consolidate all the servers or the physical servers into one virtual machine, will not make it a single point of failure. If something happens to the machine and you lose all the access to all the applications, let's say HR module, finance module, and operations modules, you have different virtualized servers on one single box, and suppose something happens to that box, then you have a single point of failure. So how you tackle that situation?
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, please go ahead.
Well, usually virtual servers, you have to buy them in a certain way that they are really fully redundant. So even if it's not just that you buy a server and you install Microsoft Hyper-V and start putting virtual servers on it. The planning should be that this virtual server should be redundant, should have redundancy in the power supply, in the controllers, it should be fully redundant. Now, this is the proper planning to get a virtual server. And with it also, you get more flexibility in the backup. Yes, it's a single point of failure, but if you have it fully redundant, if you see some of the virtual racks that are really built properly, you will see that even the switches are redundant, the controllers are redundant, the power supply is redundant. It's almost fully redundant. And it's also very reliable. Very rarely we see, if you put the server in a data center environment that is really properly built, it's very rare that you see that the server just breaks down. It happens. And yes, we have Murphy's Law. When everything is just done properly, everything fails, But virtual servers, they have to be bought in a special configuration that they are really redundant. And you get the flexibility to back up the server very easily, to move it from one place to another. You can control that, but I think leaving this to the virtualization management engine is better than getting the human involvement in it. It will control it better. It will see even the utilization and put the resources if you need more resources to be done on that. Okay. But I don't think any server can be bought as a virtual server. It has to have a special configuration where you get redundancy in that server, so you will avoid the single point of failure, as well as maintaining proper backups for it. This should be like part of the plan and always always maintained, especially the backup.
If I may just add, now when you talk about virtual servers, the impression you talk about one physical server that have virtual environment in it. But that's not actually true most of the times. You can have a virtual environment that have multiple physical servers as part of it. So in my case, I do have multiple servers, multiple physical servers. They are making up the virtual environment. So within the engine of virtualization engine itself, if one physical server is down, the virtual environment is really aware of that and will actually move the load to some other place. Now, there are certain ways. Either you have multiple physical servers that can make up your virtual environment, or you can have what they have a case that has redundance, power, redundance, internet, redundance connectivity, and within it, you have the blades inside it as servers. So you have redundancy at the case in terms of power and internet and everything. And within the environment itself, you have multiple servers that doing that work for you. So you have 50 servers, 40 servers, but you have actually 8 physical servers
that doing the job for you. One of them will break, the other will pick up. Okay, so that's how you build it up. And I agree with you, the backup is extremely important in that.
So single point of failure, that was a question, and I think you heard like two different views how we can overcome with that. I would like to add the third point actually on top of these two. When we are talking about virtualized environment, yes, it could be hosted on different physical machines, as Mr. Mamdouh was saying, and as Mr. Hussam was saying, yes, you could have a redundancy, so maybe there is an implication of cost over there. But from my side, what I want to put the third point, like as an organization, you should have like a business continuity planning, where disaster recovery, backup strategy, those kind of things are very crucial. So when you talk about a virtual environment, you are talking about a file actually. So you are just talking about a file that has to be backed up and that should be available in case of a disaster. In case of disaster, that file you restore on any machine and that machine will come in production. So you save the cost and you save, you are up to date with the technology. Yes, can we have another question please? Yes, here. We'll come to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Actually, when we are talking about cloud business here, or the cloud computing, it's not only about virtualization. We are talking here about another meaning of outsourcing, where the customer needs to outsource his infrastructure to the people that they are, we cannot say better than him, but we can say the people that they are focusing on that business, on the IT business itself, which is the IT companies or the hosting facilities providers, like the data telecom hotels providers here in the kingdom. And this actually it will solve the issue of taking care about redundancy and the failover and all these issues, because the backbone of the providers, it would be by all means much better than the customer environment, because this is their butter and bread business. This is where they have to focus on, and they have to provide the best support and the best infrastructure and non-stop environment for the customers. Thank you.
So here you go, guys. You don't need to learn the technology. The vendor will take care of it. Okay.
Yes. I think cloud computing and virtualization, they are like working in parallel. Actually, you have to start virtualizing, then you go into cloud computing. Because what you will do is that when you have a virtual server, you have your software. And your software is separated from your hardware if you have virtualized. So you could move that software to any place that it goes. You could just put it on any environment that you would want. It's the connectivity to that software that would make it run. And the resources that it needs, it gets it from any place. There's also a big cost benefit in virtualizing than using cloud computing, mixing both. There are many examples. I think it's always that when I try to be a director or manager of technology and doing my job, I always look at examples that have seen and take a lead by example. So if I see a good example, I try to study it well and see if I can do it here. We had a project of trying to analyze quite a huge number of images. Those images, we wanted to take a very high quality of them, and then there is some software to enhance those images. They are old, more than 50 and 40 and 60 years ago. I tried to do a small research. I found the New York Times, they had their old archive. It was all images, and they wanted to convert that archive into a PDF format or a modern format. So they made a study for that project, and they said, okay, if we want to do it, they had 15 million archived images of old newspapers since the 1930s and 40s. And they were images, and they wanted to convert them to a PDF format. They made a plan for this, their technology department. And they found out that they will need 3 servers, and those 3 servers have to be working for 4 or 5 months, and then they would get the job done.
Yes, we have 5 minutes left actually. So
Only
we need
5
to take-
minutes?
Yes,
Ah.
yes.
Okay.
So can we take another question?
My contribution will be basically on refocusing back on the single point of failure that we have talked about servers. In my opinion, the confusion is coming from, the people who are taking servers for machines. Technically, when we talk about servers, we are talking about server applications. That's the program, that's the software. The servers that people talk about are basically, I'm talking about the machines, but the machines can host multiple servers, even without, virtualization and without, cloud computing environment. We're still on a single server machine or a server class machine that we call it more specifically. We can put a number of servers, database servers, a web server, and etc. All these are applications. So the point that this is a single point of server is not valid because the application can fail whether it is on a distributed environment or on a virtualized environment or on a standalone environment. So that's one point. The second point is I would like to seek your input on the perspective of co-location in the Saudi Arabia market. So what do you think would be basically the perspective of Saudi market in this regards? And thank you.
Mr. Mamdouh, I think.
This session for virtualization, I'm not really talk much about which vendor it is. Co-location as a concept is great.
Yes.
Okay, co-location is really well used in the United States and in the West. I'm not really sure about the Saudi market, and if I use the technology, maybe it's not, from my point of view, robust enough yet. Okay, in terms of when you have co-location, that means you have connectivity in the middle, that your server is there, and you're actually relying heavily on the connectivity. And we heard earlier Gartner, Elias was talking about the connectivity issues we have, stability issues, let's say, in Saudi Arabia. So I'll be a bit reluctant at this point of time, actually, to co-locate my really critical servers somewhere outside. Okay, and it's great. It's really amazing that someone else would take care of your servers. But are we there yet? From my perspective, I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, I would not advise for co-location. I think co-location will, it's good. Some, the issue of trust is very important. And some organizations, when they want their data, which is very critical, it's their breathing, their business, everything is there. They want to make sure that they have it intact, they have it in hand on a certain server. But I think co-locating a server, why don't you go and buy a virtual server? You go to any provider, there are many now, and they are evolving very much inside Saudi Arabia here and in the GCC, and you buy a virtual server. Now, connectivity is very critical. When you go and co-locate, or even if you start virtualizing, connectivity to the service provider is very critical, and it has enhanced a lot in the past 5 years. We are seeing connectivity here very stable, and thanks to STC and Mobile and other providers, and it's becoming more and more reliable. There are alternatives. There's also an issue that I wish to raise here when you think of virtualization. Now, everybody's talking about bring your own device. So many people come and they have their iPad, iPhone, Samsung Note, I don't know what's coming up, Each day they come with a new device. With virtualization, you get rid of worrying about that. You have always a client that links to that, install it on that software, and he can use as a laptop, his device, his own device, laptop, as a PC, as a telephone these days, the IP telephony, everybody's using it on that. But co-locating a server outside, I would more recommend. It's not that it's a bad choice or something, but it's better that you buy a virtual server and move your current server software to that virtual server.
You mean outside the company?
Outside the company, yes.
Basically, co-locations, the companies usually, they use, like if they don't want to go for an investment to have their own DRC, disaster recovery center, they use in that time that co-location as a, you know, as a secondary location. In case the whole site is down, then you go there and still your business continues.
Even in that, virtualization is a better choice than co-location is very much linked to physical server, that it's located in another place.
Yes, but you have to weigh the benefit and the disadvantages, because with co-location you will be you have a huge saving in terms of powering and cooling of your IT equipments if they are located inside your own premises. Otherwise,
it's a great concept, sir. You're right. Okay, it's a great concept. Co-location, and I said not just for disaster recovery. You don't want to have actually your servers in your own premises. You want it to somewhere else. It's a great concept, and I think is really you can actually what you talked about, maybe having virtual servers. It's a kind of hosting now. You actually can host your server somewhere outside, and you can buy it online. I think this is totally different concept. If you want to have your physical servers in someone else's data center, and he takes care of that. And I think we answered your question, sir.
That's co-location. If you get it, in a data center, basically. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we have another question? I think we have a couple of minutes. Here.
In the front, please.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Adding back to virtualization reliability, I would like to discuss one more great feature of it, which is the restoration time. We have observed that whenever any physical instance goes down, it takes quite a few efforts to restore back, and whereas the virtual instances offering you full-fledged backup as of data. So in my case, I had an instance where I had to, I found that one of our critical application server crashed, and it took just a few minutes for us to restore and come back to normal service if you have properly backed up your virtual resources. And instantly, if you maintain a proper library, then instantly you can, restore it in minutes, and your application is, back up and running. And the other subject, which is the co-location, I think it has a great benefit for the startups and SMEs, or the companies who can't afford a full-fledged data center, or expensive IT resources, or the security controls and the power and backup, the UPS systems or cooling systems. And for them, I think it's a great benefit, people who are looking for a couple of servers and not to have all those resources in-house. There, it's really add a great value, whether it's a physical or virtual, provided they have a connectivity, that's it. They can start, their production applications or development and all those things. So in general, it depends upon the scenario and like large organizations who can afford. It's really not advised to go and co-locate, and who can afford their own data center facilities, their power systems and cooling and security and all. But the great benefit goes to companies who can't afford, who can't have the luxury of the state-of-the-art data center. And for them, it's really add a great benefit and value to locate it, to have it at a service provider.
Yes, that I consider as a comment, and thanks. Can we have another question, last question? Is that was a question? It was just like a comment.
Comment.
Yes, okay. Do we have any question, please?
I'll have a quick comment here. Just
yes.
Now, I said earlier the reason for us going to virtualization, and I'll say now we are running virtualization in our environment. Having virtualization is actually help us a lot actually deploying servers very quickly to our clients. So if one of our customers need new server, we can right on the fly give him a server and it's up and running like in a couple of hours or maybe sooner than that. So it makes the life much simpler. It makes your data center smaller, and if you actually monitor your usage, you can actually keep really making your virtual servers smaller based on the usage. So I think it's a good option for companies that do not really want to waste money and to look forward to have actually very optimized services and servers in their data center.
Yes, thank you.